Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic. Another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
And my name is Jordan. I'm an addict, and I am the third wheel to this relationship forever
Yes.
and always.
And I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him. I'm recovered for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. Yes, and each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversations centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, please like, comment, share this episode, and subscribe.
Subscribe. It's like
even though I modified
like.
this one he still needs to yap. Go ahead.
Like, share, and subscribe.
There you go.
And now the disclaimer: the thoughts and opinions expressed on at the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. And of course, everything we talk about is for general information purposes only. Get into it.
His manager said you need to have it. Make sure you get this many words per episode. So it's like he's all blah, 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 blah.
For our listeners, I don't have a manager. We ain't got that.
Yeah, exactly.
I can barely manage myself. Barely got here.
Unmanageable.
I am unmanageable. How is everyone?
I'm good. Doesn't it feel like a really long time since
It does feel like a really long time.
I'm good, actually. It's like I'm really good. How about you, Jordan?
No complaints. Yeah, I got a raise at work.
Ooh.
Word.
A whole 7%.
Okay.
It's more. It's 7% you didn't have before.
I know,
That's true.
exactly. You
I know that's like a poor person thing to say. Well, you didn't have that $50 yesterday.
So Starbucks every day now.
Hey.
I'm all right now. What about you?
I'm okay. Jordan, you said you had no complaints.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, I have complaints about you.
About me?
I'm kidding. I don't know why I said that. So I'm fine. I've been. I just wrapped up my second rotation today.
Oh, good. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, and then I start my third and last rotation next week on Monday.
And that's
It's gonna also be in Walnut Creek, but
Okay.
I'll be on the dual diagnosis team.
okay. So, and this will be like less kind of stressful.
It'll be okay. First off, don't spill my tea.
Did I spill your tea?
No, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know. Just why am I even here? So I've had a long day. No, so the dual diagnosis team, like addiction in general, especially in a big hospital system, has so many moving parts. There's so many different like treatment modalities and all that other stuff. So I'm just moving into a different part of that. So it likely will be like as heavy.
Okay, right on.
Yeah. But yeah, otherwise I'm fine. Thank you for asking.
Sweet.
So today's topic, we're returning to our conversation of bridging the divide. So abstinence versus harm reduction, or harm reduction versus abstinence. We had this conversation a couple episodes ago, and it got a little contentious.
Yeah, spicy.
It got pretty spicy
Tell
because,
me about
well,
it.
Lewis and I didn't realize that we fell on different sides of it.
Exactly.
Well, and isn't even falling on different sides of it. But it was like I didn't realize he had the opinions he did.
Yeah, no. I think
Which were wrong.
Exactly. Well, I think going back and listening to the episodes, I think that we, in a lot of ways, we agree. It's just that, again, it's like when we first started the conversation, making sure that when we're talking about harm reduction, we're talking about the same thing. And so in listening to your educated version of it, like that, you're throwing all those college words at the
Here we are.
I'm kidding. No. It's like I think we understand. I mean, you know, the whole point about like, I think that folks who are clearly wanting to practice harm reduction through a harm reduction kind of tract, as opposed to individuals who maybe are struggling in meetings, because I think that was different. Like, yeah. So it's like, I think that we definitely didn't leave thinking, fuck you, I'm good.
Yeah, I think what happened, Jordan, and I really want to hear what your opinion is. I think what happened is in our conversations about harm reduction and abstinence only, the tension between those two things, not just between us, but I think with the ideas in general started to like manifest, right? So it was like a playing out of what other people think about it, right? Like there are mixed feelings about it. Some people don't understand it. Some people are for it. Some people are against it, but there's like a lot of like misunderstanding and confusion, and also like protective factors, like especially if a person is in an abstinence-based only program. What do you think, Jordan?
Okay, so I've heard from other folks, right, that the purpose...
You look like you should be in a production of Hair.
So
Since I got here.
yeah, Louis just interrupted Jordan.
Yes,
So we need to tell people why. Because he has on this jean shirt with this like this was that embroidery on the pockets?
He looks very kind of relaxed and very.
You look relaxed.
Very
He has 2 gold chains on his beard. Oh, and 2 gold rings on. So yeah,
Justin's always serving up.
He's serving up a look.
Jordan's always serving up.
Who's Justin?
Okay, so this episode is done.
Jordan, who's Justin?
Thank you.
Wait, who's Justin?
I'm kidding. It's like I'm all I you know it.
That was the boy from last night.
Huh? No.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Jordan.
Yes.
What do you think?
So what I've been told is the purpose of harm reduction is to essentially save lives, right? There's a lot of programming around in harm reduction where it's how do you safely test your drugs, right? How do you safely use drugs? How do you safely reuse needles or not reuse needles, right? Where do you go to get new needles, right? Things like that. Mm-hmm. I think the main goal of harm reduction is to just save lives, right? From a very theoretical point of view, right?
Yeah.
From logistics and like being in it and trying to do harm reduction and it not working for me, right? It was very much like I needed to slowly get into abstinence only. I needed to slowly get into abstinence only programming, right? By ways of harm reduction. There's a lot of folks that I know that do harm reduction, right? And harm reduction can look so many different ways, but I think it's why we get the headbutting in the arguments because it looks so different, right? Where I think a lot of folks who are really old timers in 12-step program, but it's worked for them.
Yeah, right? That's right. Yeah.
And I think those folks who are really adamant about doing 12-step because it worked for them, they want it to work for other people as well.
Yeah. And I think that I like that you said theoretical because what's I think important to acknowledge is that one, we're a queer podcast. We're in queer recovery spaces. And so for a lot of people, like queer folks especially, it isn't just theoretical, right? Like it's life-saving. Mm-hmm. It's personal, right? And I love that you described kind of your trajectory, which is you started off in harm reduction and then you realized like, oh shit, this actually isn't working for me. Mm-hmm. It might work for other people, just not for you. Before we go on, I just wanted to give quick definitions of both of them. So harm reduction is defined as strategies to reduce negative consequences of drug use without requiring abstinence. And it isn't just like drugs in the kind of traditional sense, it could also be alcohol. And then abstinence-based recovery is basically complete cessation of substance use, often within 12-step or other sobriety frameworks. But let us continue.
And you know what I had started saying is like, I really feel like abstinence and harm reduction are not kind of mutually exclusive for me. Sure. Like I feel like and I've said this in the last couple of weeks, that I feel like that I'm practicing the form of harm reduction that works for me. So it was built up gradually, especially if you're someone who has used crystal meth or other drugs that are kind of, that drug it does a number on you. It gives you the impression that everything, like most of them, like we come in and you know, that in the 12 steps we talk about being restored to sanity. Well, it's not the sanity like insane or sane. It's that getting to a place finally where I can accept that the thing that I thought was saving me was the thing that's actually killing me. And so it was a process because I can remember like years and years before like I even thought about recovery, being in a room using crystal meth and saying I need to stop, and knowing that this something wasn't right, but not knowing that I needed to do something about it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think too, like harm reduction can't, in my opinion, can be used in other facets of life, not just drugs and alcohol using, right? Like for me, I can do harm reduction in reducing the amount of sweets and sugar that I eat, right? And I think it's how you apply the principles of harm reduction to your life, right? Which I think can look a lot of different ways, which is the same thing with 12-step, right? There's a lot of the principles in 12-step that I apply to my day-to-day, right? So I think it's about picking and choosing what you want that applies and that works for you, that keeps you happy with your life.
Right. And I love that. So I'm actually thinking about something you said earlier, but around this idea of like works, right? And what we do know, and you mentioned this earlier, is that harm reduction does work. And what we know about harm reduction, especially when we're talking about needle exchanges, or the use of like medical assisted treatment, like Suboxone. Yeah. Like what we know is that it reduces HIV infection. It reduces overdoses, overall mortality, right? So we know it works. Yeah. But similarly, we also know that abstinence-based programs also work.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Okay, so I think where I was having some of my challenges was this idea, like, I feel like harm reduction programs, they do work, but is there a question about, do they work long term? Because I understand in the moment, in the now, but if I'm using for the rest of my life, is it sustainable?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. I'm thinking about like patients that I work with, and it's not uncommon for me to work with someone who's in their 70s or 80s who's been drinking or using drugs basically their whole life.
Yeah.
Now, were they using a harm reduction model? Probably not, right? But they survived that long with like continuous full use. I mean, not without being unscathed. Right. So, I mean, that's my answer.
Yeah.
Like my answer is like, I don't know. And then also like people who are in abstinence-based only programs, like they're not guaranteed long-term sobriety. I mean,
no.
Yeah, we go to meetings, and like so few and far between do we meet people that have like 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I think for me with 12-step or any other program that's abstinent based, there seems to be a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe I'm a little narrow in my thinking, and maybe there is a goal. It's just not a finite goal in harm reduction.
Yeah, I think what you're describing, Jordan, were you going to say something?
Oh, I think that the goal for harm reduction is survival, right? I don't know if it's necessarily longevity, but I'm surviving day to day, right? Which I think it depends on your definition of longevity, right? So like for folks that are having to test their drugs all the time, it's so they don't die that day.
Yeah.
Right. They're using fresheners so they don't get more sick or that they don't contract another disease. Right. And so I guess that you have to define longevity. Right. And even like, for folks going through 12-step, right. I know when I entered 12-step, I was like, I'm just here for the next 30 days. I'm here just for the next 60
I'm just here for the cookies.
Right. I'm here for the next hour, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. That's my longevity.
Yeah.
So I think also too, it's it's so individualistic, and how do you define that for yourself?
Yeah. And I like what you said earlier too, because in my opinion, and what I've noticed in like the 10 plus years that I've been in the rooms, is that like successful long-term recovery has a combination of harm reduction and abstinence, right? Like for those of us who've relapsed and we've gone in and out, like you could argue that there was a form of harm reduction there because we were returning back. Lewis and I talked about that before.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think in general, long-term sobriety isn't linear.
No.
Right. And even if someone has never relapsed, like the quality of their life probably isn't always like up,
Yeah, exactly.
And so to your point about there being a goal, it's like how we define success, I think that does change, and I like the examples you gave, Jordan. Right.
And that's why I want to believe, even though I don't have to, but I want to believe that individuals on harm reduction tracks, like even if it doesn't seem like from the outside looking in, that from their perspective, they are moving along.
Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't look the same from year to year or day to day, that it changes. Like at some point, what was me trying to maintain was now me trying to stop, And I think that I sometimes I hear that and I think that I need to be mindful that, okay, I'm passionate about what I do. I need to make sure that like I stay in my own hula hoop. I was like fucking shit, Anthony. No,
God. My God.
No. It didn't go that way.
Yeah.
It's like that's how we challenge each other. Yeah.
Yeah. But also too, I would argue on an even larger scale, we have a tendency to do an us versus them. Right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Like,
well, this is where one of the reasons why we're going to talk about it again, because you make a very good point. Like where do people go when there's not a lot of options for folks who aren't just focusing in on abstinence, or even those people in between, those people in purgatory, as you will, who are constantly struggling, like they're not able to maintain in the abstinence-based programs, but the harm reduction programs possibly don't work for them either. Right.
And a good point about it. It's a false binary, right? For queer folks, like being abstinent can feel like respectability politics.
Oh yeah.
This is what a good person does. Where for other queer folks, harm reduction might feel like this is defiance, but it could also be like an issue of survival. And I think that false binary is informed by a bunch of different things. It can be race, right? It could be class. It could be gender. Like there are all of these different things, right? And I've met so many people, for example, who've never had a low bottom because they've had all the resources in the world. And so they never really had to face kind of like the material consequences that say someone who is homeless or eventually becomes homeless, right? Yeah. And so I think like when we're talking about like the difference between these programs, it's like, yeah, maybe there are certain allowances that are made for people who just occasionally use Coke, or like,
yeah.
I don't know anybody who just occasionally uses crystal meth. There's a period where you first where you occasionally use crystal meth.
Jordan's like, speaking of, brings out his pipe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but it's a point, right? I think it goes back to this idea that the only requirement to come into a 12-step program is a desire to stop using.
Yeah.
Period.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right? So even if that desire to stop using is for the next hour, for the next day, whatever that is, right? If that is harm reduction, right? I think that needs to be echoed and repeated, and that should be on a poster in a 12-step room.
Say that again. What should be on a poster?
The only requirement
work
is the desire to stop using. Yeah.
That's one of the traditions.
Right. But that's not posted nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, the part that the going deeper, the part like, yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because I think that when we get to a place where we're really comfortable with ourselves and how we're showing up for ourselves or whatever, then I can have that conversation. But when I'm uncertain and I'm looking for ways for this not to work, like, because I've had friends and I commented, I have friends who went out thinking they were just going to go out that night and then they didn't get to come back. And I think that's where it's tough. But I agree with you. It's like, the only desire, especially if it's 12-step, you're looking is the desire to stop using, and I don't get to decide. They changed language before. It used to say an honest desire because they were like, I want to get in your face and say, and it doesn't have to be whatever it is. It's like I've heard, like in a meeting last night, I have a good friend who's always saying, you know what? Sometimes I had to get loaded to come to a meeting. I had to get loaded and I had to stay, and that was what he needed. And so if you need to get loaded to come to the meeting, then you are welcome here. This is the best place to be.
Yeah. And for some queer folks, like like they're using substances to be in spaces that don't feel safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And, when we think about mental illness, or we think about like substance abuse, those queer folks, LGBTQ plus folks are disproportionately like seen in the numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot going on there. And I think the other thing here is, because I think ultimately what we're all talking about or agree on is that, care should be compassionate and non-judgmental.
Absolutely.
And, I hate the phrase meet them where they at, because it feels kind of overused at this point, but like, what the fuck does that look like?
Yeah.
And I think at this phase of my career, I've seen shit recently that in my 10 plus years in the rooms, I've never witnessed before. And I think I've shared that before about how that literally there are people who just don't get it and die.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Like they just can't stop.
God, yeah.
Like I've never been face to face with that before, and I'm so humbled by that. Number one, but number two, like this is a deadly disease. Addiction takes people out all the time, and I think I see it as my responsibility when I'm like working with someone or I meet someone in the rooms that's like struggling. It's like I don't know exactly what that struggle is, but I'm not going to be the asshole that makes it worse for someone.
No, absolutely. I think that's a conversation that doesn't happen all the time, but I always say this, like, when I say that sometimes I need to love people from across the street. I think people come into, and right now I'm speaking specifically about 12-step, people come into the rooms or whatever, and for some reason think that they have to do things perfectly.
Right.
Or they have to be overly spiritual and they have to open their arms to everybody.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a conversation about like, if you're incapable of letting this person, releasing this person to be and letting them have their own experience or whatever, then maybe you need to step back and allow somebody else to do it. And there are times where certain meetings I don't go to because I don't want to be that person. Right. I don't have it to give. And so I'm going to let somebody else do it. And there are some people that are amazing, that are always able to kind of show up and make people feel welcome. And I think that is one of the things that might help with that to squash that environment that makes it feel, the judgment, the whatever. It's like,
yeah. And I think that's part of one of my, we've talked about this before, and you took issue with when I said this. One of my issues with 12-step spaces is that it's also one of the strengths of 12-step spaces is that it's not like they're governed by professionals, right? Yeah. You have a bunch of people who have this shared interest in being sober, and you bring those people together. Mm-hmm. We are on different, like, what's the line from the book? It's like, we are like a group of people who typically wouldn't mix.
Yeah, we wouldn't mix.
You know what I mean? And so, we're all coming in with trauma. We're all coming in with addiction that has implications for how we think and behave. Mm-hmm. And then you bring all those people together.
It's not a hotbed of mental health.
It's not a hotbed of mental health. You know what I mean? And so, and that's why I really support, like programming that's like affiliated, like more controlled, where you have professionals, right? Where you have like a formal container. Because I think, especially someone who's in really early recovery, like just got out of detox, that secure environment is just so necessary, I think.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder too, just like thinking odd, but when I initially came to the country club fellowship, I was looking for fellowship.
Dick.
Well,
yes, and that's how I make friends. It's called a gay handshake for a reason.
Uh-huh.
All right, we're not going to do this. We're listened to all over the country.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. I was
a gay handshake.
Yeah,
but like, I'm coming in looking for people who understand, people who I can build a friendship with, right? And and part of it was my addiction too, was trying to find the differences and be like, oh, this isn't for me.
Of course,
let me go back to this other quote unquote community where I was using, and I felt more comfortable because we were all just depressed people in a room in the dark.
Yeah. 100%. We're going to find the people that allow us to be the person that we think we are.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
I feel like to your point about finding like your community and everything, I think what happens is that we get we get this opportunity. We have this perfect opportunity to connect with people, but we have to do more work beyond that. And if we don't know how to do that work, if we don't know how to show up, because I think one of the things we're doing here is learning how to be with people again, learning learning how to make the world doesn't just revolve around me. It stopped, because I don't know about you, but I still struggle. I'm pretty. What is that? Self-focused,
self-centered, egotistical.
I like the self-focused, but I changed it to self-focused to make me sound better.
I want to use that.
That shit just threw me off.
I want to self-focus.
I'm focusing on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I heard somebody too. When you say you're selfish, that you're selfish. I'm kind of about self, but not really. That's kind of crazy.
The English language.
Now we're saying crazy things.
I know. Boogity boogity.
Hey.
Wow. Going back to the gay handshake. So the reason why,
and on there.
well, the reason why I came back to that because I checked myself. I'm like, are you censoring Jordan? Mostly I was just kidding, but I was thinking about like, what is that about? Right. Like even if it's a joke. And I think what it's about for me is like, what if the wrong people listen to this podcast and they, you know what I mean? Like we end up on Fox News and they're like, see, Jordan says it's a gay handshake. But we're not in control of that.
Yeah, exactly.
We aren't in control of
completely
that.
powerless over.
We certainly are.
Really, it's like we are not a monolith as a group. It's like, I mean, we have, it's kind of like with the other side, the louder voices are the ones that usually people record what they say.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
And on this side, the louder voices just happen to be the one that are overly sexualized. So it's
well, it's interesting because I think the same thing happens to conservatives. Like we're like the conservatives exactly. The conservatives we hear
seriously, this conspiracy theorists or whatever, the ones who are
I mean, and that's the thing, right? We're not a monolith. Right. I really appreciate it. No real community is. Let's land this plane.
The plane is going to land. So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help change lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and catch new episodes every Monday.
Every Monday.
Thank you, Brandon, you're a rock star.
Every Monday.
Stay with us.
Monday. Jordan, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yes.
Make good choices.
Yeah, make good choices. Bye.
Make good choices.